Hey, I'm Adam Jusko from ProbMoney.com, and in this video I'm going to review the Gap Brands credit card. But before I do that, I would ask you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not already, and if you have already, I thank you for doing so. So the Gap Brands, which is the Gap, Banana Republic, Old Navy, and Athleta, has a rewards credit card that is essentially the same regardless of which of these stores you are looking at. So this is a card that is, potentially you could apply for at Gap or Banana Republic or Old Navy or Athleta and get a different looking card, but in the end you are essentially getting the same card in terms of what it offers. You can use these cards interchangeably between any of the brands, and while you may get some different discounts, or at least slightly different discounts over the course of the year depending on which one of these brands you choose, oftentimes even those things that may be marketed toward Old Navy or Banana Republic specifically can oftentimes even be used interchangeably between the Gap stores. So there's very little difference between these. So for purposes of this video, I'm actually going to kind of talk about all of them as the Gap credit card just because it is the easiest to say, and you can think of that as being the same as any of these cards for the most part. So looking at the Gap Brands credit card, it is issued by Synchrony Bank, a bank that issues many retail store credit cards. They are the ones backing this card. The thing to know about Synchrony Bank for some people is that Synchrony Bank is usually pretty easy in terms of their approvals for potential new card holders. The Gap is actually pretty well known for anybody that shops within these brands to be pushing their card. So their standards in terms of who will be accepted for this card are often lower than bank credit cards for sure, but maybe even for some other retail store cards. So between Synchrony Bank and the Gap, for most people, if your credit, as long as your credit isn't terrible, you probably have a pretty good shot at getting approved for this card. Now, when you do apply, you are going to be considered first for the Gap Visa, and if your credit is not good enough, you could then end up getting the Gap store credit card, which is only good within the Gap brands. You can't use it anywhere else. However, that's not a big deal. Whether you get the Visa or you get the other store card doesn't really matter in a way, because I would suggest, that the only place you would want to use this is within the Gap family of stores. It doesn't really make sense to, even if you qualify for these Visa, it doesn't really make sense to use it outside of the Gap stores. Now, in terms of the rewards, you get 5 points per dollar on your Gap purchases, Banana Republic purchases, Old Navy purchases, etc. And if you use it, if you have the Visa and use it outside of the Gap stores, you're only going to get 1 point per dollar, which is part of what I'm talking about in terms of why it doesn't make as much sense to use it outside. Now, every 500 points is going to get you a $5 reward certificate, which essentially means you spend $100 within the Gap stores and you're going to get a $5 reward, which is a pretty decent reward. It's a 5% reward. It's a reward that doesn't require you to spend a lot to get to it. The downside of these rewards is that they expire quickly. So you're going to get a reward certificate. Oftentimes you're going to have 6 weeks at the most before you have to use it, before it's going to expire. So they really are trying to get you right back in to a Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic, or online to use that reward certificate. So that is something that I personally never like about this card, or cards that do the similar thing with these very short expirations on their rewards. So it's something to definitely watch out for. Now, when you get this card, you're going to get 20% off your first purchase with it. Many times, if you are actually buying within the store, you may have already had the experience where you go up to the counter and they try and get you to get the card right there. And oftentimes they will approve you right there, and you'll get that 20% off of the purchase that you are making. So again, this is a card that, they're really trying to get you into that card, so much so that you could be instantly approved and use that 20% off coupon, or whatever you want to think of it, off that purchase immediately. Now, if you have over 5,000 points in a year, if you earn over 5,000 points in a year, you could get to the silver level within the Gap Brands program, which will give you an extra point per dollar on your purchases that you make within the Gap family of stores. So that 5 points per dollar would go up to 6 points per dollar. So a little bit extra there. You would get free online shipping if you get to that silver level, and some other perks as well, probably a little bit better discounts throughout the course of the year. But for the most part, it's that 6 points versus 5 points that silver level is going to get you. In terms of an interest rate on this card, like many retail credit cards, it has a terrible interest rate. As of the making of this video, it is 26.99%. Regardless of where interest rates go, it's always going to be pretty terrible, always over 20%. Probably usually over 25%. So this is a card that you do not want to carry a balance on. Use it for the rewards, use it for that initial discount, but do not carry a balance, or you're going to pay interest that is going to eat away at those rewards, or will actually be more than you'll ever get in rewards if you really let some things sit on this card over the long term. So overall, a pretty decent card if you are a regular Gap shopper, if you are someone that can, go after the rewards without, the possibility of actually leaving any balance on your card. A decent reward in terms of the 5% on the purchases that you make within the Gap stores, but you have the quick expiration date. Like I said earlier, if you have the Visa, no good reason to use this card really outside of the Gap stores. 1 point per dollar in terms of rewards. You could do better, finding yourself a different cashback card that's going to give you 1.5% or 2% on, all of your other purchases. So no reason really to use this one, to try and rack up more points with the Gap. High interest rate here also, so that's another downside to consider. Overall, fine to add this if you're, if your credit score is good and you're always going to pay off your balance in time. Having that little ding to your, credit score when you open a new account, not a big deal. I've actually opened this card a couple times myself in order to get that, 20% off or whatever it may have been at the time on a purchase I was about to make, and then pretty much just sock drawered it and had the account closed at one point, and then 5 years later or whatever it was, when I was standing in front of a register again and had a significant purchase, reopen the card. So if you're somebody whose credit score can handle that, there's no reason necessarily not to do it, as long as you're not carrying any debt on this card. Decent reward, even though they don't, the rewards don't last very long, and you can get a discount on your purchases when you first get it. So that's it. Please go to proudmoney.com, where we do other credit card reviews and have personal finance news and all sorts of other fun stuff too. Thanks for watching. Bye.